Hello and welcome to another Star Wars Destiny video, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to have this gameplay video running, but for the most part I'm just going to be talking about some of my thoughts about where Destiny is going. Obviously a lot has happened. Erratas have come out and most of the top tier aggro decks, if not all, have been hit hard. Most of them have been reduced basically to 3 dice decks if you want to play them. Now, lots of people have talked about whether or not they like the erratas. Lots of people have done errata reaction videos. I won't be doing that. I will say that I do like the erratas as a whole. I think that they will be healthy for the game, especially since I think they will slow the game down just a little bit, a turn or two, and that will really help us get back to the feel of how Destiny was in Awakenings. A couple of channel announcements. I'm in like the Destiny Council is what we've called it. It's a group of 4 guys from Minnesota who have been my playtest partners. Sorry if you hear the Facebook chat there. But who have been my playtest partners and who went to Worlds, and all 4 of us made top 16. We did quite well. We didn't have the best luck in the cut. That's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. But Andrew, for example, who's on the left of this video here, went 9-0 in this West. He was the only 9-0 player. I went 8-1. Will went 8-1, and Brian went 7-2. We all did quite well, and from that we just kind of kept going. Like our playtesting group just stuck together. We did a little bit of podcasts, and then we stopped because of life stuff. And basically now we are starting back up again, hopefully, and we're going to be doing a lot of content production. So a lot of my videos and like time may be going into that channel, so I encourage you to check it out. It is the Destiny Council. But I will still have lots of my I assume that I'll still have plenty of content posted here. So post errata, I think, and this, you don't have to agree with me on this, and I could very well be wrong because we're still very early stages of the post errata meta. I think that Qui Gon Kanaan is the deck to beat. It may seem crazy to you, but yeah, I think that I'll just spend this video talking about the deck and why I think that is the case, and you'll also get the benefit of seeing the deck in action as played by my brother. So basically, in a vacuum of damage decks, I don't think that Qui Gon Kanaan is necessarily the best deck, because if it loses Qui-Gon early to some sort of aggro deck, Kanaan won't be able to come back depending upon what upgrades are on him. He's really strong, but he's not going to kill 2 characters on his own, most likely. He's not going to kill 3 characters on his own, certainly. It could happen, it's just not very likely whatsoever. So in that sense, if every deck was just like a damage deck, I think that Qui-Gon Kanaan might not be the best. It would still be tier 1. It wouldn't be this tier 0 deck, though. However, once you add in mill decks, basically the way that I think about it, a lot of the damage decks that are out there got hit, and now we have all these other damage decks that are just slightly or significantly slower. They're still really good, but they're not as ridiculous as they used to be. And I think that a lot of mill decks can come out of the woodworks here and do quite well. Especially Riken Mill is surprisingly and annoyingly good. I think Jabba Dooku is going to find a place simply because of how good it is with chance cubes, because of all of the focuses on it. It's basically, I mean, think of Thronkar like buyout deck. Less money, but way more hand discard. Dooku is now way more buff. He's going to survive way longer because there aren't just random melee decks that will delete him with Vibro Knife. So his passive becomes way stronger. The deck has a lot of health, a lot of effective HP, and a lot of discard from hand. And with stuff like Chance Cube, Temptation, it can make a ton of money. Can do Asymmetrical Crime Lord, and can buy you out. In addition, I really feel that, or despite all this, I really feel that Qui-Gon Kanaan is the best possible aggro deck against a mill deck. It really doesn't care what its rolls. I mean, in a sense it does. You'd really rather roll the 2 sides on Qui-Gon, and you'd like to hit the focus, or maybe the 2 melee / the resource on Kanaan, but you can do a lot with your rolls. A lot of your sides just deal damage because of Qui-Gon's passive, and you also have just direct damage in that if you use your lightsaber pulse to get 2 Shotos out early, there's no way for mill decks to deal with that anymore. You just activate, deal 2 damage, take all these shields, and just keep on dealing damage to them. Even like pre-errata, Qui Gon Kanaan slaughtered Thronkar. It was, I mean, I don't have any gameplay videos of it, but my brother played Qui Gon Kanaan a lot. Andrew played it some. I've played it now, and it really does just do incredibly well against mill decks. So I think that once you add in mill decks, Qui Gon Kanaan just becomes so good. My brother's pretty depressed about that double blank roll there. So what does the deck have going for it in the aggro versus aggro matchups? Basically, it wins races. It wins the race to the first kill because of its natural defensiveness. The 2 shield sides on Qui-Gon really help you win, like you keep your characters alive. Stuff like Caution and early guards for multiple dice. Things like Force Misdirect, which is insane with Kanaan because of the focus. You can basically Force Misdirect any side in the game, except for like discard, really effectively with Kanaan. So you can remove, like if your opponent rolls out and hits 3 shields, you just focus their shield side, remove the 3 shields. If your opponent rolls out, hits a couple of ranged dice, you just focus to the ranged, and then Force Misdirect on ranged. It's really good. So they have really solid removal. And they just keep their character alive. While at the same time, they have really strong burst in the sense that synchronicity is insane. 0 cost for 2 unblockable damage is super efficient early game. And even cards like Return of the Jedi, which is a really inefficient card because it's just 1 resource for effectively nothing, is now 1 resource for 2 unblockable damage because you just pull back a synchronicity. The amount of early damage you can get from that is good enough to typically kill a character on turn 2. And because of that, Qui Gon Kanaan wins races. Now, once you've won the race and killed one of the characters, it becomes even harder for your opponent to ever kill Qui Gon. If you have 2 Shotos on him, and your opponent now has one of their best characters is dead, you're just not going to kill Qui Gon. There's too much good removal in the deck, and there's too much natural shield generation for you to kill Qui Gon. There's now another melee deck could possibly use a Vibro Knife to hit through with like 4 unblockable at some point. But it really is rough. And to just give you an idea of how survivable these decks are, and how good these decks are. Firstly, Andrew, myself, Luke, and Will, Luke being my brother, we all went to a tournament at Fantasy Flight this past Sunday. We all played Qui Gon Kanaan, and we were like 15-1 against not ourselves. 3 of us made the top 4 cut. I ended up winning. But yeah, so the deck did extremely well. I mean, it helps that a lot of, we're some of the better players in our meta, so you'd expect if all of us bring the same deck that at least some of us would do well. But we all did well. The only reason one of us didn't make it is because we eliminated ourselves. We eliminated Will. His 2 losses were to other team members. But on top of that, to give you an idea of how survivable these decks are, in the Qui Gon Kanaan versus Qui Gon Kanaan matchups, you would see like 5 turns before the first kill, just because of how good Force Misdirect, how good Guard, how good all the shields are in that matchup at keeping characters alive. You'd have the Qui-Gon versus the Qui-Gon, and it'd be like, who can get this first Qui-Gon kill? You could still have a chance of coming back once you lost a character, but it's really rough. But yeah, basically Qui-Gon Kanaan just stays alive. I don't know how else to put it. It's really, really hard to kill Qui-Gon, and at the same time, they just keep chipping away at you and can have some really bursty plays. Another really strong thing about the deck is its upgrades. I run a significantly different version than most of my other teammates in that I only run 2 Shotos, 2 Ancients, and 1 Raised Lightsaber. I'm probably going to add in another bigger upgrade, but basically, the deck gets as much use out of its 2-drop upgrades as most decks get out of their 3-drop upgrades. So cards like a Shoto Lightsaber, once you have 2 of them on Qui-Gon, each of those is essentially a 2 damage, a 2 damage, a 3 damage, a damage and a shield, a damage and a resource. It's just +1 to all sides. Now in another deck, it's just a shield or a removal of a shield, but with Qui-Gon, you can always just remove and deal a damage off of that activation. So Shoto becomes insane for 2, the value of that die. Ancient Lightsaber has one great side on it. It's the +3. And with Kanaan in the game, it is just insane because the focus from Kanaan allows you to just, if you have a base side, you just focus the +3 and immediately hit for 5, hit for 4. You can even focus the +3 and then guard 3 dice if you decide to take the play a card action. So yeah, its 2-drop upgrades are basically as good as most decks get out of their 3-drop upgrades. And because of this, you can have a lot more resources for your events, and a lot of your events are 0 cost already. So you can see things like being able to play 3, even 4 events in a single round in a single round, yeah, in a single round of the game. Whereas a lot of other decks, if they draw several one cost events, they're not going to be playing all of their events from their hand. Qui Gon Kanaan can easily play all of its events if it wants to. Um, Yeah, so I just think it's a really solid deck. I encourage you to try it out. The way that I typically play it is I drop my first upgrade on Qui-Gon. People start going for Qui-Gon, so I lightsaber pull in my raised lightsaber so that if Qui-Gon ever does die, it moves over to Kanan, and I focus on getting Ancients onto my Kanans so that I can deal a bunch of damage. I keep Qui-Gon alive for as long as possible. I try to kill whoever I think is the best target. And then from there, I have this problem where I'm a Johnny 8 combo player, so I have to play a combo. I actually run Swiftness and Concentrate in the deck, just so that on turn 4, turn 5, when you're rolling out, you have a bunch of resources typically with the deck, because you basically just stop buying upgrades. Qui-Gon dies, Rey Saber redeploys, you already have 2 Ancients on Kanan. You don't need to spend any more money on upgrades, so you just have money sitting there for events. A lot of your events are 0 already. So you roll out with Kanan, you hit like a 2 melee side, your opponent's like, 2 melee, I can handle that. He activates a character, and you're like, Swiftness, Concentrate, turn your 2 Ancient Sabers to +3s, and then deal 8. At least that's the theory. I don't think that's necessarily the best version of the deck. I don't think those are the most efficient cards, but I really have an issue with playing any sort of deck that doesn't have a good way to get through removal at the end of the game. It's just so important to be able to guarantee the end of the game finishers. So that is why I run that combo. Some other cards that can be really good that are also die manipulation, even lightsaber training can be really good. 1 cost to turn 2 of your dice to the size of your choice. I mean, same thing. You get Swiftness, lightsaber training, and turn both your Ancients to +3. Or the raise to the 3 for 1 and an Ancient to the +3. Things like that. And even Clash can be really good if there are other melee decks in your meta. Just like the pseudo removal with the built-in time manipulation is really strong. And one thing that you don't really quite get out of that card that I don't think most people realize is that it's really a tempo builder. It is essentially a reroll for you, so that saves you an action of rerolling, and it forces your opponent to reroll himself. And especially if your opponent decides they need to reroll the die that you just rolled, or to remove the die you just manipulated, then they're going to spend a turn to remove a die, and then they're going to spend a turn to reroll their blank. So it really sets back your opponent in the pace of the turn, which will usually end up allowing you to claim. So I think that that's one cool part of Clash that I think you should be conscious of. And yeah, I mean, just anytime that a 1 cost card can manipulate 2 dice, it is pretty good. So yeah, I mean, I think I've basically talked the deck to death. I don't know if there's much more I can say about it. I think it's really good. I think you should try it out. If you doubt me, go ahead and tell me why. Just post it in the comments or whatever. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and start talking a little bit more about this game. So, Hera Vehicles with Maz is a really solid deck. I don't think it's quite tier 1. I just think it has a little bit of consistency issues with getting actual vehicles onto the board. It doesn't have any issues with getting Hera Vehicles onto the board, but if it doesn't draw a Recycle, if it doesn't draw a Chance Cube early, it can really hamper the deck and ever being able to like ramp up to the point where it has enough vehicles on the board to deal enough damage. However, on the games where it does start with a Chance Cube and immediately gain 2 resources from it on the first turn, and then plays down a Y-Wing, and then the next turn you do the same thing and play down a U-Wing, then the deck is great. So However, into Qui Gon Kanaan, I think its matchup is pretty rough because it doesn't have any shield hate. Without the shield hate, um, and because of how spread its damage is, Qui Gon Kanaan can essentially mitigate a vast majority of the damage just with its shields. While at the same time, Qui Gon Kanaan is typically rather bursty, it kind of relies on Brine and early synchronicity or other such events to burst early. But because of that, or even drawing like an ancient and rolling like a focus on Kanan, can just allow you to do a lot of burst damage. And when you do that, it allows them to kill the Maz early. And while Maz isn't as important to the deck as it would be in some others, it is. I think the deck's like it's the thing that makes the deck consistent, and it's also the character that allows the deck to generate resources. The chance cube on her is just so good. It also allows for a more consistent partnership for a cheat if you want to do that. Um, yeah, it just helps guarantee die sides. So I think that losing the Maz on turn 2 consistently is pretty rough. I mean, Qui Gon Kanaan, this is another thing about the deck. It has a lot of piddly dice. I mean, you look at my brother's board state right now, he has 1, 2, 3, 8 dice, and single die removal just isn't going to cut it against that. And for that reason, a deck like the vehicle deck, which only really has single die removal, it can't run something like defensive position because it's not fast enough. The deck's going to really struggle with controlling Qui Gon Kanaan. And for that reason, I mean, for all these reasons, I just think it's a hard matchup. So we see my brother roll out here into a pretty solid roll there. That is a lot of melee damage. Kanan just wanted to roll some resources, but what can you do? Another random thought about Qui Gon Kanaan. Kanan really does allow for much faster turns than you would think he does. If you use his ability twice on a turn, his pseudo cheat, it will just make your deck faster. You already only have 2 characters. So yeah, Qui-Gon Jinn can be really fast and can get off a lot of claims if it wants to, which is really important because one of the biggest weaknesses of the deck is that almost all of its removal relies on dice being in the pool. So you really do want to stay ahead, and typically the games where it loses is when it gets behind in tempo. And here you see the very scary focus on Kanan. One of the strongest sides in the game. It's so scary for an opponent to be looking at, and now you're just gonna see 6 damage coming through here. Focus +3 resolve the 6 melee into the Hera. So it's looking pretty scary for Andrew, but he still has 2 Y-wing dice that he could be resolving for 8 this turn. Interesting that he chooses to reroll before activating his other Y-wing. I typically wouldn't do that. You want to get as much rerolls out of each card that you pitch to reroll as you can. Maybe he's concerned about multiple die removal from like a force misdirect or something. Although there's just a Qui-Gon die out there now, so rolls out the other Y-wing into another 2. I don't think that Andrew should settle for 2s. He could kill off Kanan here, but Qui-Gon will easily slaughter Hera next round. Oh, and now that Luke's taken a couple shields, definitely not gonna be able to kill Kanan. Rolls in the double blank. Looking kind of sad for Andrew here. The one thing we can see, though, is I believe he has strategic planning and a resource throwing on Hera with a focus. So if he does get any rolls here that are decent, he can... double special. He can deal a lot of damage. So 8 damage coming through into Luke. Pretty rough. You can toss Kanan down to that. It's close. So now he can take that resource, strategic planning, and then just focus into another special, which is going to put Luke, who has only 7 health left, at 3 damage away from losing. So that is pretty scary. Sorry, I just had a message I had to respond to. Sorry for some of my low production quality at time in my videos, but what can you do? So yeah, Kanan's only got 1 health left, and Qui Gon only has 2 health left. This is a very scary moment. So Luke has a couple of options here. It's kind of scary because I think that he has to add shields or heal right now. So yeah, he does activate Qui-Gon because of the partnership play. If Andrew draws partnership and hits the special on the U-wing, it would have killed. And you can see there that he does have the partnership. He's gonna go ahead and play it. But that 1 shield on Qui-Gon is enough to make the 2 to each character not a kill. He's gonna roll out. He's hoping for a 1 and a 3. He hits the 1, but hits the 2 resource on the U-wing, so it looks like this may spell the ending of Andrew. Yeah, it's going to be lots of damage coming in here. Luke can deal 2 and then take 2 shields. I guess that wouldn't quite be enough, though. So Andrew still has some hope here. He's going to spend 1 to go ahead and kill Kanaan. Luke's going to go ahead and take the 2 shields to ping 2 damage. So now Andrew is in lethal range. Luke is showing 2 damage on his melee, so perhaps Andrew could have shot away that 1 shield on Qui-Gon instead of killing Kanaan. But then Kanaan just gets rolling, so it's hard to know. I don't think there's much he can do here. He drew a lot of removal earlier on in the game, and he plays the Negotiate, which is not going to get rid of Reyes. So the game goes to Luke on Qui-Gon Kanaan. End up coming down to a real close finish there. I mean, that's just kind of the highlight of vehicles. Why vehicles are almost tier 1 is because they have 4 dice that allow them, or 4 cards that are 1 cost that are really above the curve. The rule is generally the rule of 2, 1 cost for 2 damage. But strategic planning and reckless reentry are all 1 cost for basically 3 to 4 damage when you have U-wings and Y-wings. Now, reckless reentry is a lot scarier on Y-wings, but once you have a U-wing in play, the reckless reentry essentially is almost always going to end up as a 3 or a special, and those swings are so huge. If you can reckless reentry a U-wing early game when there's 3 characters on your opponent's board, that is pain 1 for 6 damage, and that is what lets vehicles do so well at times. However, if it doesn't get a U-wing down, if it doesn't get that resource gen, its character's dice just can't do anything, and that's, I think, the bane of vehicle decks right now. If it doesn't get its Y-wings early, Y-wings are the cheapest and most brutal supports that they have as far as cost efficiency goes. 4 damage from their dice with strategic planning, being able to deal 4 damage again is insane. So in that sense, I mean, you saw there, he hadn't dealt much damage at all. Qui-Gon Kanaan were quite healthy, and then out come 3 U-wing special, or 3 Y-wing specials for 12 damage. Very strong. I know that Andrew really likes the deck. He's played it. Obviously, from the outside looking in, and not having played it, not being invested in the deck, I don't call it tier 1 just because I've seen it do bad. Typically, when you play a deck yourself, you see it. You see how you could have won, so it's easier to label it as a better deck. I'm not quite convinced on it yet. Maybe I should play some games with it. But yeah, it's a very, very scary deck. So yeah, let me know what you thought of this video. I know I just, for the most part, rambled. But I hope you enjoyed getting to see the gameplay and getting to hear my thoughts on Qui-Gon Kanaan, which I believe is potentially the best deck in the meta right now, at least that I've seen. And of course, we have a bunch to find out now with FN and Phasma and all that stuff getting there. So until next time, guys.